Hi, everybody. We are excited to be here at a little bit of a different Boston Marathon Expo this year to do our mental toughness panel. I'm here with our three panelists digitally, Amanda Nurse, Cara Gilman, and Emily Saul, who I will introduce to you guys momentarily. First, a brief intro. My name's Cassie Shortsleeve. I am a local Boston-based freelance writer. I write for a lot of the health magazines. I'm a regular contributor to Men's Health, Women's Health, Shape, Runner's World, Condé Nast Traveler, Parents, and other magazines. I'm also the founder of Dear Sunday, an online platform for new moms, and had the pleasure of working with all three of our panelists in different capacities. Amanda was actually my run coach when I ran the marathon a couple of years ago. So I'm excited to introduce them to you guys. I'm going to start with Cara. Cara Gilman is a yoga teacher, a run motivator, and a mom. First runner, then yogi. Cara found yoga, like most of us do, through countless injuries and the need for a consistent stretching practice. Little did she know that yoga would forever change her life, personally and professionally. After just 6 months of teaching, she left a corporate job to start her own business. And now, after teaching for 8 years, she's had the honor of teaching at some of the best studios in Boston. She's an ambassador to Lululemon, Fitbit, and Sweet Green, just to name a few, and a guest faculty teacher at Kripalu to teach yoga for runners classes for Runner's World. She's been featured in top publications like Self, Competitor, and Boston Magazine. And she's the founder of Run Yoga, a running community that blends the practices of running and yoga together through mindfulness. She has 15 plus years of running experience. She's completed 9 marathons, and she's a mom to 3-year-old Madeline and 7-month-old Ethan and a 4-year-old pup Rudy. So she's excited to be here to share her perspective on mental toughness as a yogi, a runner, and a mom. So we're excited to talk to you, Cara. Amanda Nurse is a marathoner, running coach, yoga teacher, and a mom. Over the course of 10 years, she's taken a marathon PR from a 3:26 to a 2:40, earning her way to 2 Olympic trials in 2016 and 2020, elite starting lines at world major marathons, and placing as 94th female marathoner in the country in this year's Olympic marathon team trials. Running really transformed her both professionally and personally. Once a clinical social worker, now she balances her time between it being a dedicated RRCA level run distance through Amanda runs Boston coaching, and being a full-time mom. She inspires and coaches runners of all abilities and levels towards their biggest goals. She's an Adidas-sponsored athlete, and she's also regularly featured in top publications such as Self, Women's Health, Runner's World, and Shape. She's a 22-time marathoner, a mother to almost 3-year-old son Riley, and wife to Wellness in Motion Boston owner and chiropractor Ian Nurse. So we're excited to have her here today to discuss mental toughness as it pertains to the marathon, and more specifically to virtual racing that we're going to be doing for this year's Boston Marathon. And last but certainly not least is Emily Saul. Emily is a sports psychology coach and the founder of eSaul Movement. She holds a master's degree in sports psychology, and she's also a licensed mental health counselor. She has a deep desire to help people integrate their athlete selves and human selves to find and unleash the potential inside of them. You might know her because she leads the November Project in Boston, which is a free fitness movement where she motivates and challenges athletes of all abilities and walks of life to engage in and get the most out of fitness while harnessing the power of community. She was a Division I college rower, coached strength and conditioning at Harvard for 7 years, and is an avid marathoner on road and trail. She spent more than a decade as a facilitator and educator on the relationship between trauma and play in children's lives at the Life is Good Playmakers, a nonprofit organization in Boston. She has a unique perspective on the essential role that movement plays in human well-being. And she offers an important voice to the conversation about how we use movement to create meaning that fosters growth, both during the current state of physical disconnection and beyond, as we seek to reconnect and recreate new norms of living meaningful lives. So yeah, really excited to have all of you guys here today. So I think we can just jump right in with some questions. And Emily, I was thinking we could start with you just from a sports psychology angle of, what does mental toughness mean to you when you think of that term? Can you kind of define it from your perspective?
Yeah. Thank you, Cassie. Also, really great job with the introductions. It's a lot to say in a row. When I think about mental toughness from the psychological perspective, I very simply like to think of it as believing that I can do hard things. That's what having mental toughness is. And it really is then also about seeing the challenges that exist in those hard things that present themselves, whether it's a marathon or running a marathon by yourself, whatever the challenge is seeing it as an opportunity for growth of strength rather than just a challenge that's sort of standing in the way. So there's really an opportunity. I think mental toughness is really accessible to a lot of people because it isn't anything more complex than finding and really engaging in that belief that, like, yeah, this is hard and I can still do
it. And so, I mean, believing you can do hard things, right? We look at things like marathons, even something like yoga that requires a lot of kind of mental dedication and focus there. Do you have any tips or kind of suggestions for, how do you do that? How do you get there? And I assume it's different for everybody, but curious if there's anything in your experience that you've gone through that has really helped with mental toughness.
Yeah, it is both unique to each individual because different things motivate us, different things challenge us. And so I would say that very simply there are two ways that we can do that. One is to look at previous experiences and to reflect and really look at the successes that we've been able to accomplish. And even if the success wasn't the particular goal, the achievement of a goal that we had in mind, but we're able to derive strength and successes from looking back and going, oh, didn't go the way I wanted, but I really stuck with it in that moment. Or being able to just reflect and find successes from the past. And that helps to give us something very credible to look at when we say, there is truth in, it's a credible statement that I can do hard things. And then the other thing, which is an ongoing practice, and this is where there are lots and lots of different tools that people can use, and it's one of the things I work with my clients on all the time, is how in the middle of a difficult moment, when you're really working on something hard, what are the specific ways that you are able to break down that moment so that instead of being this big, overwhelming thing, that you go, okay, here's one thing that I can focus on and that I can feel confident and competent in doing and tackle it and then get to the next one. So in a marathon, that might be 1 mile at a time. It might be thinking about what I'm noticing around me, some of the sensations. It might be creating certain visuals inside my mind that allow me to kind of break it down and feel like it's much more tolerable. So there are lots of ways that we can use our mental practices, those tools, to really overall build a bigger mental toughness practice.
And Amanda, I mean, as an elite marathoner, these moments have to pop up all the time, these challenging moments that sometimes are just like, oh, how am I gonna handle this? What am I gonna do in the moment? That can feel overwhelming. Is there any moment that stands out to you that was challenging for you that, like Emily said, that you have a big success in or that you overcame that you think back on a lot?
Oh, I mean, yes, every single race I've ever run, you always are presented with challenges along the way. And Emily's actually my sports psychologist, so I'm probably going to be echoing a lot of what she says. But, but for me, I'm thinking of the Olympic trials just back in February. It was the last race I've run, obviously in 2020. And it was a really challenging course. It was all hills. It was a headwind the entire time. It was just the most difficult course I've ever run on. And I remember thinking the whole time, just get over this next hill, like just get through this mile, just get, just let those feet continue to do the same cadence. And starting to, I'm really competitive. So something that has helped me all my life is in a race, I look for, the girl or the guy that's in front of me and trying to just close that gap a little bit. So for me, it was exhilarating with 500 women in the field, to try to pick girls off along the way, try to catch them, and use that as a motivator for me along the way. So yeah, I think there are a lot of things, but I think mental toughness can definitely be inherent a little bit. Like we all have a little bit of that in us, but it's something we have to train for. Just like the physical part of marathon running, the actual marathon itself is only like 10% physical. It's really mostly mental. And the people that excel the most in the marathon are the ones that have been training their mind throughout the course of their physical training to excel in that course, because there's a lot that can happen in 26.2 miles. So your mind has to be really with it the whole time in order to do well.
Right. And I mean, Cara, when it comes to training your mind, I think a lot of people look at a practice like yoga or mindfulness, and think, oh, I need this. This is going to really help me get there. Curious kind of what mental toughness means to you and how you see the intersect of running and yoga.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it on the head. Mindfulness is the word that comes to me. And you can just simply define mindfulness. I know a lot of people use that word a lot, but what mindfulness means is just paying attention on purpose without any expectation or judgment. And so when we think of mental toughness, it's allowing yourself to show up to these really, really, really hard moments. So as Emily mentioned, you can do hard things. And it's allowing yourself to be all in from all angles, and how can you find joy in the struggle? How can you find focus in the struggle? And Amanda mentioned this too. How can you also allow yourself to have this calm conversation with yourself when you're enduring these hard moments? And so when we talk about yoga and we talk about running, I mean, yoga is just a way of finding connection. That's really what yoga is. And so a lot of times we think yoga is stretching or strengthening, but a lot of it is allowing ourselves to just show up to enjoy, show up to endure, and show up in just in a calm manner. So that's how those two kind of really intersect and become powerful practices. Because Amanda said, so much of our running, yes, it's physical, but so much of it is how we show up mentally. And if we're not able to find joy or challenge or an opportunity to grow in those really tough moments by exercising our mental toughness muscle, well, we're not going to go very far. It's not going to be, I think of so many times in my running practice where if I wasn't going after that tough moment or if I wasn't pushing myself, what's the fun of it, right? Part of it is seeing how you're growing and seeing the journey that you're carrying on by enduring these tough moments and growing from them.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think 2020 specifically has brought a lot of tough moments, right? And so I'm curious, people who maybe had plans to run the actual marathon this year, people who have had plans to run other in-person races, they're faced with a lot of unexpected challenges right now. So how do you kind of handle the balance between having this mental toughness practice that you've worked on and then kind of all of the unexpected and a lot of challenges that people are facing today, whether it's a virtual race and not having that connection you thought you'd have, or just kind of like the turmoil that's going on, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely want to jump on that question in that I always joke with my clients who come and say, I've got these really big goals and I just need the perfect race day. And like, I'll bring all the other stuff, but I just need like the weather to be good and the course to be good. And I joke that marathon runners are the biggest poker players out there. It's a gamble because you can have a perfect training cycle. You can put in all the miles. You can feel totally fit and ready to go and excited. And then you might have a really hot running day. I ran Boston 2 years in a row and it was really hot. And I was like, well, this is not my best, but it's the best that I could do today. And so what we talk about a lot, what I definitely talk about a lot, is that you can expect the unexpected for sure. And a big part of mental toughness is being able to identify what are the things that are totally within my control, and doing the work to feel confident and comfortable about those things. And then also being totally open to what else is going to happen that I didn't expect or I might not be prepared for. And then how do I want to be able to show up with some energy, with some joy, with some like sense of adventure, with some like, oh, well, this is happening to everyone, rather than just sort of taking it personally or feeling like, you know, the race is out to get you or those kinds of things. So it's very much about, you know, expecting that there are going to be a bunch of things that are out of your control, and not letting that get to you, and not sort of piling on judgment on yourself or creating higher expectations for yourself that you should have been able to control those things. That I think is pretty important for racers.
And I love that you said kind of like, how can I show up today? And that answer is going to be different every single day, maybe every single moment, every different circumstance. Amanda, when we think specifically about running a virtual race, any kind of tips for people there when it comes to, you know, showing up on a day when maybe you don't know what to expect?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just setting yourself up for success, like Emily said, in every possible way you can. And we were all joking before this call about how it actually presents a really cool opportunity when you're running virtually, because you set your course, you can put out your water bottles like you're one of the elite male or females running the race. You know, you have your fuel and your drinks out there. You can have your own cheerleaders along the way. Yeah, for sure. It's not going to be the experience of the Boston Marathon as normal, but it's going to be able to be a thing where you can look back and say, wow, I got to do, hopefully, the only virtual Boston that ever existed, and that it could be a really cool opportunity. It might not be your fastest, and that's okay. I've been telling my clients, you know, you've trained so long at this point, right? Most of my runners have been training for the Boston Marathon since January, because they were going to run in April, and then they were going to run the real race in September. And now that it's virtual, you know, a lot of runners have lost motivation, thinking, oh, you know, it's not going to be the race of my dreams. But it really can be if you put your mind to it and you just say, like, this is what today will bring. And one cool thing is that for the virtual race, you can pick any day within that week. So say the weather's really hot and you were planning on doing it on Wednesday. Well, Saturday maybe will be a totally different, you know, weather day. And if you're in New England, you know, like it could be 50 degrees one day and 95 the next. So you can kind of pick and choose what works for you and set yourself up for success in the best way that you can.
And I'm curious, I mean, I don't know, maybe Cara, this is a question for you, but, you know, everybody, it seems like a lot of what you guys are saying too is everybody's gonna be able to have kind of some of their own autonomy around how they build mental toughness, right? But how do you as an athlete, you know, as a person, kind of find what works for you? Do you guys have kind of certain techniques? Is it trial and error in terms of staying mentally tough?
Yeah, I think it's just all practice, really. I mean, it's practicing in these moments to see what, you know, what makes you motivated, what you're connecting to, what you're inspired by. And so as Amanda said, like, you have this whole week to kind of figure out what actually works for you, because you can look at your training and say, okay, actually, you know, Saturday isn't the best day to do a long run because the weather or whatever, whatnot. Or maybe you don't have to run. With Boston, a lot of people are running at noon, the way that's timed. So you can run at 8 a.m. or, you know, you have this opportunity to look at your training plan and figure out where your strengths are and really define the race based on your strengths. And what I love about this too, I always view the marathon really as a celebration of all the hard work that you've done. You know, like not even all the hard miles, but all the moments you woke up at 5 a.m., all the times that you juggled being a parent and getting this done and this done. It's a celebration to celebrate your hard work and what you did to get there. And more than ever, I feel like what's so special about this race is you define it. Like Amanda said, you can put out your water bottles, you can put out your snacks, you can have your own personalized crew. I mean, this is your time to have fun and to celebrate you being mentally tough for the past 6 months or however long you've been training to have the race of your life. And I know that sounds like really woof, but it is. I mean, that's how running should be. That's how all these really exciting opportunities should be. I mean, the marathon is a celebration, and yeah, we're not able to meet in Hopkinton and take it down Boylston Street, but how can you make it your own to make it that way for yourself, right? So go to your favorite running spot, go to somewhere that means something to you, and make those 26.2 miles mean something. And let it be a celebration. And I think that's the most important part of any race, whether it's Boston, whether it's a 10K in your town, have fun and enjoy it.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it kind of makes me think of, oh, go ahead. Yeah, it was making me think of what you were saying earlier, Emily, about kind of like building off of your successes. Like this is almost a chance to, Cara, like you said, play to your strengths, but also look back on past races and tune into those successes, right?
Yeah, perfect. Like draw off of what Cara just said is that it's both looking at what has worked for you in your training. But I think there's a great opportunity to look back at previous races. If you've done any races ever, I've had so many conversations with people who say the best race I ever did is the one that I just jumped in with my friend and I wasn't doing it for me and I didn't care. And sort of all the circumstances are that the pressure was pretty low. And when I think about like both my own experiences running Boston and any race at all, is that it's pretty overwhelming. It's pretty overstimulating. Like there's a lot of noise and a lot of people and you can't get to the bathroom and it's early in the morning and like there's a million details. And that people we're able to adapt to those situations because we're really adaptable, but they aren't optimal for us. And so what this situation gives everyone the ability to do is go back and say, what were those optimal circumstances? What were the races where it felt really great? Was it really small? Was I just running with a friend? Was it a training run where it was so low pressure? I was like, oh, I'm just doing the miles. And then you end up running this amazing time. So to be able to set yourself up and to create the circumstances of this virtual Boston that allow you to really feel like you're at your best, all those optimal circumstances. And so it might be just telling yourself that this is a training run and going out and doing 26.2 miles. Or for the people who love the hype and are like, man, this is so like, it's going to be not exciting and there isn't going to be the crowd and that sort of thing, then I would really think about design your course so that you're going to have access to more people, or ask people to show up for you and create that kind of hype, or really work on your visualization skills so that you can, in your mind, put yourself in those races that you've been in before to really bring the energy of the crowd or the hype of the race, to get you into that best space possible. Because when your mind is in the right space, optimal, then your performance follows. And that's what's really exciting about everything that Cara and Amanda were saying too, just noticing the things that make it great for you.
Oh, let me add one more thing. I was thinking about one thing that would totally make me feel like I was really running the Boston Marathon, and that would be to make my own bib and write something on me that's like, I'm running the Boston Marathon right now. And you will get so many cheers and people will be screaming your name the way that they would be in the race.
Yeah.
That always helps me so much when I write my name on my bib or whatever and people, cheer for me. So yeah, I would do as many things like that as you can in order to draw off the energy from the people around you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I wanted to add off of something you said, Emily, just kind of about, if you're one of those people who's like, oh, I really need the crowd and it's not going to be as fun this year, whatever. Amanda, you mentioned earlier just being super competitive. And I think a lot of runners who are going to do the Boston Marathon are very competitive. So that's probably a common feeling. So what do you say to people who are missing that competitive edge and maybe need it for their mental toughness?
I mean, I say I hear you. I totally acknowledge that. That's why I think virtual racing is a lot harder, is that it's really much more internal than external. And you have, at the end of the day, like, you're doing it for you. You're doing it to, like, feel good about yourself and to, get out there and just do the best you can on that given day. I think one thing I've been telling my clients is that, this is a fine time at this point to find a few friends that might want to try to run a similar pace, or like Emily and Cara said, maybe there's someone that wants to run a few of those miles with you or something, just so that you have someone to work with. I think that is a huge thing for me. Is it's really makes the run go by much faster if you have someone that you're working with, or if you're trying to chase down. So maybe you do get a group of 10 people together that all are running the Boston virtual event, and everyone might be within 10 minutes of each other or whatever, but then at least you still have somewhat of a race feel. So I'm actually doing that with some of my clients. I'm organizing 2 small virtual events where they have 10 or so people that are all running in similar times, to be able to run at the same time. So it gives them somewhat of a race feel while still doing it in a very safe way. So that's something to think about. And you do have a few more weeks to be able to plan these things. I'm not sure when this is going to be live, but gather some friends that might be wanting to do something similar, or even run a half of it with you. It will make a huge difference.
Yeah, there are really great ways, Amanda. Those are awesome examples of physical planning. So how do you work with people? Have someone, like, you love to chase someone who's out ahead of you. So there's no reason why you couldn't have a handful of friends who just kind of cycle around being, 100 yards out from you or a quarter mile out, and your goal is just to chase them down because that works for you. And there are other things that you can do. If you don't have those same people resources, there are things that you can do in terms of your own thought process. It does take different effort than when you're in a race with all the people, but there are absolutely things that you can do in terms of focusing your mind, and whether it's having been in that kind of situation before in a race, I love examples of Amanda just thinking, like, there's that person and I'm just chasing them down. Well, bring that memory to mind and place that person on the road in front of you so that you're chasing them down, and you're able to recall the physical effort required just with that visualization. So that's a big tool I think that people are going to be able to use.
Yeah, actually in yoga, they call that dristi.
Mm-hmm.
So with a lot of my running peeps, the Run Yoga crew, I've been leading some guided runs for them for training. And it's just visualizing, like Emily says earlier, like visualizing that mile marker, but also allowing that mile marker to pull you in. So imagine energy drawing you almost like a laser beam or something, like pulling you forward, and then identifying the next one. And just like you said, Emily, earlier, like breaking it down, but having these dristi, these gazing points where it breaks it down, and you're just simply focused on being in that moment, running to that pole or running to that street or running to that person. It's really powerful because, as you said, Emily, too, it's with the marathon, it's so overwhelming, especially when you're doing it by yourself. So that kind of breaks it down a little bit. And something else too that I used to do for long runs is actually do loops. So you can almost imagine, like, maybe you're doing like 6 loops or of something or whatever, and you start over again. And that's where actually you could actually have people come out and cheer for you. Like, hey guys, like, I'm running this 6-mile loop. Here it is, share it on social media, and have people show up for you. Maybe provide some nice hydration stations. But having a loop and then having people come, I think that's an awesome way. And have it be in a really special place that means something to you. Is another powerful way to have fun and to, like, break it down mentally, to be a powerful thing. And then something I always think about in college, when I ran my first marathon, my senior year of college, I was running, like, in the morning, no one was awake, and to keep motivated and to keep inspired, I would imagine, like, bushes being people and, like, high-fiving them just to, like, get me super pumped up. I know it's super weird, but it really worked. And I always tell my Run Yoga people about it as well. But just imagining people there, bushes, trees, whatever you got, and high-fiving and having fun, putting a smile on your face. I know, Emily, you're huge into that. I am too. But bringing in that positive energy, making this race your own, is so important. So those are things that I would be doing if I was running the Boston Marathon virtually.
Yeah.
So Emily, tell everybody what does Cara mean by that? I know you're huge on that, a smile on your face.
In terms of the smiles, well, there's all the science that tells us what changes biochemically in our bodies when we smile. And there's something really powerful I have done in significant times in my life, but when running, to commit to like a mile of smiling. So especially when it's like, this is so hard and none of my body wants to be doing this, and like I really just want to stop running. If the only thing I can change, I can't run faster, I can't like go any harder, but I can put a smile on my face and just allow that change to affect everything else in my body. It's a pretty powerful exercise to commit to. And I remember in particular, after an injury and coming back to running and feeling so excited to run, but also feeling so like disappointed in like, I feel like I've lost my fitness, or I don't feel strong, or I don't feel fast. And, you know, here I am, like all I get to do is run 1 mile on a treadmill. And I was like, I'm running that whole thing with a smile on my face, because this is a pivotal moment in my journey as a runner, returning to, I've been craving this for such a long time. I want to really honor and celebrate everything about it. So I just think there's some great opportunities to explore and play with smiling as a tool, both for yourself and also in how it allows you to connect and engage with other people.
It kind of makes me think, yeah, go ahead, add.
I was just going to say, I choose to smile at the mile markers. So that just keeps me present and active in the whole process of the marathon. And if you think about it, you're smiling 26 times, right? Like if you can spread them out throughout the marathon and you stay actively kind of joyful around the marathon, it's going to make it a much more exciting and fun experience. Because I do know, like, you know, the second half of the marathon tends to be a lot more challenging, especially if you start out a little too fast, or, you know, if you're kind of, you've got this adrenaline and you're excited in the first half, and the second half can start to feel a little more, you really have to focus in order to maintain. So I just make it a point to, regardless of how I'm feeling, just make sure that I'm putting a smile on my face to kind of like jumpstart my body a little bit, because it really does make a huge difference, like Emily said.
Yeah, just add on a little bit more.
Smiles is a, yeah. No, I was going to say spread out the smiles is a good hashtag.
Yeah.
I like that.
Go ahead, Cara.
Yeah, and just something else too is just like saying hi to people and waving to people. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but when I'm out running, I'm always like, hey, how are you? Hi. And that always gives me energy. I've been stroller running with my 2 kids, and it's been tough, but I'm doing it. Talk about mental toughness. But it's so cute. I'm always like smiling, saying hi to people. And then my daughter's always like, Mommy, who's that? And I'm like, it's our friends, Madeline. And she's like, oh, okay. And it's like such a powerful thing. Like all these people are out there. We may not know them, but they have a powerful way of giving us energy and getting us pumped up. So tap into that too, especially for this virtual race. It'll really make the difference.
I want to add on to that, particularly where the difference between running an organized race, where everyone who's there knows that they should be cheering, right? That's the expectation. It's just the norm of being a spectator. And because this virtual race doesn't have those same kinds of expectations, and it's not as easy for other people in the world to know, oh, you're running a marathon, I should do this. It's okay to tell people how you want them to respond. So as you go by, it's okay to say, I'm running the Boston Marathon. You can I really encourage you to do that, because if they don't have those expectations, but you can communicate them, you're more likely to get your needs met, those emotional kind of energetic social needs that we all do races for, at least a little bit. And so that's something I would encourage everyone to think about too. How can you do that either in planning ahead, so you're staging those people for you, or if you happen to just be running around, tell people what you're doing and be proud of it, because people will cheer for you.
I love that, asking for what you want and need. And it sounds like kind of what all you guys are saying and alluding to, which I think is kind of cool, is the power of positive emotions as they work to help build mental toughness in times of challenge. And Emily, I don't know if you can just kind of comment on that, or, you know, we hear a lot about gratitude, and you talked about, you know, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna smile, you know, I'm happy to be here. And is there a certain element of appreciation and of positivity there that can really fuel you through tough times specifically?
Yeah, so there's a couple of points that I want to hit on, and I love that question. The first point is that there's a whole field of study around like post-traumatic stress disorder that affects people after they've experienced really difficult things, overwhelming stress. And what they've found is that there's also something called post-traumatic stress growth, which is that even when really difficult things happen, people have the capacity to grow as a result of that. And the people who have the most post-traumatic stress growth are actually the folks who are able to acknowledge the costs as well as the benefits of that situation. And so I think there is great value in focusing on the positive and seeing the opportunities and the possibilities, which is what we're all talking a whole lot about today. And it is an important thing to give yourself permission, give yourself space to go, this has been really different. This isn't at all what I expected. This is not the in-person thing. There's, you know, it's been hard to stay motivated. To acknowledge the cost, the weight, what's been taken, and what's not here that you had hoped for, and also then acknowledge the benefits, the differences that have been good for you, the ways that you have gained from this particular experience. And that allows this thing, which is unique and unexpected and totally different, to actually help to create more growth from this as a whole experience. And so I think that's just one thing to kind of acknowledge, that it's okay to feel like there's been parts of this that have been really hard. And then just to acknowledge that, you know, the power of gratitude, the power of that, you know, focusing on really what is good in this moment, allows us to feel a lot of motivation to move forward. And I, specifically in regard to mental toughness, it's just important to recognize that we don't build strength only from, like, you know, doing the hardest things and kind of getting beat down. We actually need a lot of reinforcement of our success in order to build that strength that becomes mental toughness. And so the more we can frame how we think about things, so that we can say, oh, that was a good thing. Oh, that was this little bit of success. It doesn't have to be the whole race at a time. You can go, that 1 mile, I feel pretty good. Okay. And like, let that feed you and fuel you, so that you can continue to build the strength and the confidence that you're looking for, to feel mentally tough, to take on the other hard things.
Awesome. Great. Well, you guys have all given a ton of amazing insight and a lot of really good tips. I guess before we close up here, I would just want to ask, maybe we can just kind of go around, if there's anything else you would say to runners who are preparing for this new kind of race day. There's obviously a lot to take away from this conversation, but any kind of closing words of wisdom, if you will.
I'll start. So I would treat, this virtual race as your real race day. Do all the things you normally would. Eat the same way you would the night before. Have your rituals, because those are what is going to set you up for success. And if you are, striving for a certain goal or just trying to enjoy the whole process, like, do the things that you would as if you were really running on the Boston Marathon course, you know, with 30,000 other people. So that's my first thing. And then I would say the second thing is that, just as it, like what Emily was saying about acknowledging the hard times, know that the marathon is never going to be smooth sailing from start to finish. That's just the reality. Like every single runner, no matter if you are a first-time marathoner or, you know, you're one of our Olympic hopefuls, every single person has challenging miles and challenging times throughout the course of the race. And it's up to you to be able to just acknowledge that, know that maybe it's just a challenging mile, but the next one might be better. And I think that's such a big part, especially when you're virtual racing. You know, if you have a bad mile at mile 3 that it just doesn't feel good, don't scrap it just because you think, oh, well, this is just how I'm going to feel the rest of the race. Acknowledge it and say, I'm just going to keep going. The next one will be better. And it really is. The marathon is a roller coaster in so many ways, but mentally, if you can really just stick with it and acknowledge the hard times and acknowledge the really good times in it, you're going to be so much happier and have a better race if you do that.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I think my biggest advice is that empower yourself with choice. More than ever, it's all what you focus on, right? And you have the freedom to make so many decisions that empower you on race day, right? We talked about it earlier. You can define what time you start. You can define where you run. You can define your cheering squad. You have the tools, the power to make this race yours. It's just how you show up for it. So the more that you can get yourself pumped up, the more you can prepare yourself, the more positive you can be, the more that you can smile. I mean, these are all ways to make this really challenging race be your own and be your celebration. So that would be my advice, is you empower yourself with choice to have this be your race and define it yourself. So that would be my advice.
I love both of those responses. I'm like, is there anything else to say? I think I in particular really emphasize, like, make this race significant for you. And a lot of the ways that we create significance in our own lives is with those rituals and routines. So I really second, like, make those, use those and rely on them. I think there's like this little tidbit of, you can always, to Cara's point, you can always focus on like what doesn't feel good or how hard this is, or maybe I should have done this yesterday or tomorrow if you have those choices. But you can always focus on something that is good right in that moment. So, you know, if your feet hurt, you can go, how are my elbows doing? You know, those feel really good, and focus on that. But I think that the one most important thing that I really encourage people to do is just remember that this race isn't happening to you. And so the more intentional you can be about what kind of experience you want to have, I think the better your experience is going to be. So very concretely, I encourage people to put together a race plan that is, here's what I want to focus on for these particular miles, or here's how I want to break it down so that I can focus on those small pieces like Cara was talking about earlier. Here's the meaning, like here's who I'm going to run this mile for, or here's a song I'm going to listen to during this point. I'm going to smile at each of the mile markers. You put a plan together that really allows you to be intentional about how you want this experience to be. It lets you create the experience much more than it just kind of happening to you.
Awesome. And I mean, I guess the biggest things I've taken away from what you guys have said, which I think is so cool, is that people have a lot more autonomy and choice than they probably realize and than they may ever have running a race this year. And from hearing all of your guys' experience and insight, it really seems like this experience of a virtual race can be many things. It can be challenging, and it can be joyful and an opportunity to work on, you know, making decisions and planning and all those things. So it can, you know, leave space for all of those things to be possibilities. Well, awesome, guys. I'm excited to do a virtual race after talking to you guys. You've upped my confidence, and yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed this webinar. Amanda Nurse, Cara Gilman, and Emily Saul, thank you guys so much for joining us. And good luck to everybody out there this year.
Good luck, guys.
Bye.
Fun.